Hey everyone, today we're going to be showing you how to install a Tusk Quiet Glide UHMW skid plate on your 2024 and newer Polaris RZR XP 1000. We're showing you how to do it on a 4-seat, but the process will apply to the 2-seaters as well. And this is one of the first things we do to any of our side-by-sides that we get here in the shop, because this skid plate is much more durable than an OEM skid plate. It's giving you full coverage front to back, side to side. It's got recessed hardware and cutouts for the drain plugs. So it's a really nice accessory to have on our machine, and it's given us the protection we need. It's a straightforward install process. Now I do want to point out we've had this installed before, so there's a few holes that are already pre-drilled on ours, but we're still going to walk you all the way through the process. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. To start out, I've laid out all the hardware in order. You want to compare this to your instructions, make sure everything's there, and having the hardware in order is going to make it easier to make the hardware groups that are shown in the instructions. So you're going to combine bolts, cup washers, and spacers together to make different combinations to get this skid plate installed. Now with that being said, we've got a few tools to get the job done. So I've got 10 and 13 millimeter combo wrenches. I've got a drill, safety glasses, T40 and T30 Torx bits, 4 and 5 millimeter Allens, a 3/16 inch Allen, and a 10 millimeter socket. The skid plate is separated into 4 pieces. So to get this installed, we're going to start in the back and we're going to work our way forward. To get the skid plate installed, you need to gain access to the bottom of the machine. You can get the job done without raising it at all. We've tipped the machine on its side to better show the process. We do not recommend doing this. Most people are just going to use machine ramps. It's going to give you that clearance and make the job a little bit easier. Just make sure that you have the vehicle safely supported and you've got it in park so it doesn't roll back. The next step is to remove all the sections of the stock skid plate from your machine. It's not a bad idea to hold on to some of that hardware too for spares later down the road. And on the main section of your stock skid plate, you want to hold on to that because we are going to cut 2 pieces from that to use later on. So you want to refer to your instructions. You can use a paint pen and mark out where you need to cut that skid plate. You could also use masking tape to do that. And then you're going to use a jigsaw to cut that out. And the cuts don't have to be exact. You just want to make sure you can use that front corner on each side of that stock skid plate. And that's going to wrap around the front of the machine and prevent dirt and debris from packing underneath our new skid plate. And when you're cutting this out, just make sure you don't cut this clamp off. For assembly, we're going to start with the rear skid, and we're going to be using hardware group H. So that's going to be your M6 by 20 millimeter flange bolt. You've got the large cup washer, and we're going to be going into pre-existing holes with threads in them. Now, every now and then, you're going to run into some of these holes that do not have threads. So in that case, you're going to take one of those OEM bolts that you previously removed. They're self-tappers. So again, if there's no threads in there, just use the self-tapper, screw that in, take it back out. You're going to have threads for your new hardware. So keep that in mind throughout the process, but let's go ahead and set the rear skid in place and install hardware group H in the 5 spots. Now a couple notes with this is we are leaving all of the hardware loose until one of the final steps when everything's installed. And if you need help lifting the skid plates in place, you can use a jack to help support everything while you get the hardware started. Next we have hardware group J. So that's going to be the M6 by 20 millimeter bolts. We've got the large cup washer. But on this one, we've got a spacer that sits in between the skid plate and the frame. So to get all this lined up, you're going to pull back on the skid plate, put that spacer in there, line up your bolt. Then you can set this against the frame, get the bolt lined up with the threads, and thread it in. Next up, we have hardware group E. So that's the M6 by 40 millimeter bolt. You've got the large cup washer again. And we actually have 2 spacers. So you're gonna stack these up and you're gonna have the grooves facing away from each other. Those grooves are gonna sit on this little tow hook right there. So we're gonna slide these in between the skid plate and the frame. Might be easier to do one at a time. We'll get that bolt started in the first one. Slide the second one in. Got that started. And thread that into the frame. We'll do that in the bottom location as well. Next, we're going to install our frame brackets. So these are going to sit on the sides of the machine. So this bend right here, the long bend, that's going to be towards the front of the machine. Short bend right here, that's at the back. We've got the 3 mounting locations. All we need to do is remove the original hardware. We're going to slide these 3 tabs. They're going to go between the plastic and the frame, and then reinstall that original hardware. And we'll just get that done on both sides. Now before we move on, I do want to point out we have these Tusk trailing arm sliders. If you are installing these, you want to make sure you get that done now before you move on to the next step. And these are sold separately. They do not come with the skid plate, so just be aware of that. Next, we're going to lift the rear main skid into place. You can see this overlaps with that rear skid. We're going to install hardware group H. After that, we can install the front main skid plate. And again, this is overlapping, and we're also using hardware group H. That's going to go straight up the middle. Next, we're going to use hardware group C, which is the short countersunk Allen head bolts. We're going to go through the sides of the skid plate into our frame brackets. You're going to have to push on this just a little bit. And I'm just going to work my way down on both sides. And if your machine is on the ground like it should be, you can use a jack to get this pressed up into place. And I've also got this centering punch that's making my life a little bit easier. At this point, we can go back through and tighten down all of our hardware. There's not going to be a lot of adjustability side to side at this point. It should be all pretty squared up, but you want to go back through and just verify fitment as you're tightening everything down. And if you are using an impact driver to tighten everything down, just make sure you don't over tighten the bolts. The next step is to drill some holes in the front sections of that OEM skid plate that we saved. To get this done, we need to set it in place, and to move this skid plate far enough back, we need to pull that front bolt back out. So keep in mind we have the clip. I'm just going to pull back enough on that skid plate to where that's just going to pop in just like that. And then you want to mount up. There's 2 screws that go in the front of this. Go ahead and install those. And as you're doing this, you want to make sure you're doing both sides at the same time. The next step is to use a jack to press up on the skid plate. You want the Tusk skid plate to sit tight against that front section of the OEM one. Once it does, you can mark mounting locations A and K with your Sharpie or paint pen. And with both sides marked, we can go ahead and remove both of those front sections and bring them over to the bench. Now over at the bench, I'm using a block of wood to help support these plastic pieces and make sure I don't drill into my bench. I'm going to use the 9/16 inch drill bit or spade bit for the mounting locations labeled K. And then we've got the 9/32 inch drill bit for mounting location A. With those holes drilled out, we want to reinstall these OEM front sections back onto the machine, but we're not going to reinstall that OEM hardware in the front at this time. The next step is to install hardware group K. So that's going to be your M6x50mm countersunk bolt. You've got the skinnier nut plates, and those are going to go on the inside of this OEM skid plate piece. They're going to line up with the holes we just drilled. And the reason we drilled the bigger holes on hardware group K is this stock piece, it has so far to bend up, you need that extra room for a little bit of play. Next, we're going to install hardware group A in these corners. So this is your M8x30mm countersunk Allen head bolt. We've got this serrated M8 nut on the back side, and that's the back side of this OEM front skid plate section. We're basically just sandwiching the two pieces together. We want to tighten this hardware all the way. Now, before we get anything else tightened down, we need to make sure we set this nut plate in place. So what we're going to do, there's only one way that it can get sandwiched in between this little pocket in the frame right here, and that's coming through the back. So I'm going to use a pry bar, pry up on this skid plate just a little bit. And we're going to slide that right into place. You can see the holes in the nut plate, they're going to line up with the two holes in that frame. I'm going to use a bolt to temporarily hold that in place until a later step. Next, we'll reinstall the factory screws that we removed from that OEM skid plate. Then we can install hardware group H in the remaining spot on the front skid. Now for the front diff skid plate, you want to make sure the second hole is lined up. So with that lined up, we can take that front diff skid. We've got hardware group L, so this is going to be another M6x20mm flange bolt with the large cup washer. We're going to start that in the lower mounting location. And I'm going to remove that first bolt we had in there, install a large cup washer onto it, and then loosely install it into that diff skid. Now to get the front mounted up, we're going to press the skid plate against the frame, at least as close as we can, and use a punch to mark that mounting location. Make sure you're squared up. This is just an auto centering punch. Press down on it. Then we're going to use our 7/32 inch drill bit. Drill that out. Then I'm going to use the smallest self tapper with the little cup washer, and we're going to make some threads. So I've got my T30 socket. I'm going to press this up, and again, you can use a jack to help press this into place. And then one other trick is to heat this up with a heat gun. to get it to bend, but just be careful, it's going to be real hot, so use a rag to help protect your hands. And from here, we'll go ahead and tighten down all of the hardware. With all of the hardware tightened down, you want to go back through and use a punch to mark each drilling location for the remaining holes that are open. We're going to start with mounting location G. Use the 9/32 inch drill bit. Hardware group G is going to be the 5/16 inch by 3/4 inch button head Torx screw. You're going to be using the large cup washers along with that. The remaining holes are going to be for B and F hardware groups. We're going to use the 7/32 inch drill bit to drill those out. Then for hardware B, that's going to be the 1/4 inch by 1 inch thread forming button head screw, along with the little Tusk cup washers. Hardware group F is going to be the M6 by 20 millimeter flange head bolt. You're going to use the large cup washers with those. You're going to go up through the frame, and then you've got the flange nuts on the back side. Next, we have hardware group D. We're going to use the 9/32 inch drill bit to drill those holes. And these two screws, they're just the black screws that came in the kit. Last, we'll do the final tightening on hardware group K. And there you have it. We've got our Tusk Quiet Glide UHMW skid plate installed on our XP4 1000. This is going to give us much better protection than that stock skid plate. If you need one of these, you can pick them up on our website. Just click the link in the description below. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more helpful content. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.